So welcome back to Everything Marketplaces, where I talk with founders and leaders from some of today's top marketplaces. So this is episode 77, which is a really great group chat that we just had with Adam Schwab, who's the CEO of Luxury Escapes. So Luxury Escapes is one of the fastest growing travel marketplaces where members can access limited time offers and deals on luxury destinations and travel packages. It's also one of Australia's leading online marketplaces. So this is a really great group chat that we just had with Adam, where we got to hear the founding story of Luxury Escapes, how it's scaled to be a leading travel marketplace, some learnings along the way that Adam shared with us, and also had a great Q&A for those on the chat. So I really enjoyed it, and I know you're going to find it a great watch to the end. So Adam, welcome to the group chat. It's definitely great to have you join us here today. So we actually have a very large presence of Australian marketplace founders here in the community, and you've been a highly requested group chat guest for a while now. So I'm really excited to have you join us here today and learn more about Luxury Escapes as a marketplace. Before we jump into things, though, I think it might be great if you can start off by sharing a little bit more on your background for those who don't know you.
I guess the really quick background is I was originally a corporate lawyer many years ago, and my co-founder Jez was a trader, an investment bank, and we started our first business, which is a very non-tech business. It was an apartments business, and then we evolved eventually to create one of the many Groupon clones in Australia. There were about 82, I think, at one point. And we essentially now it's just Groupon, and we have a small shareholding in that. So that was sort of our first foray into some sort of marketplace. It was a curated marketplace in a sense. At the same time, we actually also started building a restaurant booking business, a bit like OpenTable, which was the first genuine marketplace, actually. And as you know, it's a bit of a chicken and egg issue. You need cash to get supplied and obviously acquire customers. We had a bit of cash back then from our original business, but not a huge amount of cash. So we pivoted fully to the Groupon style business, which we called deals.com.au. Eventually went back to the restaurant business and pivoted that to a takeaway food ordering business, another marketplace. That eventually sold to a business called Eat Now, and Eat Now eventually sold to a business called Menulog, and we took equity along the way and eventually sold to Just Eat in the UK. So we had sort of a couple of journeys through there, and that was a great success for everyone. That business sold for almost $1 billion, the eventual one. So we had that sort of going on the side, and then our main focus was the deals business, and we realised pretty early on actually that the travel was the main, had much better unit economics in a way. So the local business still absolutely had its positives, great for customer acquisition, and a great tool for our partners when they really understood and used it properly. But the beauty of travel was much higher basket size. So you had AOVs of $2,000 plus, and you had much better customer satisfaction because you're working with hotels, often high-end hotels, who are dedicated to the consumer. So the problem with the Groupon style business is you put yourself very much in the hands of the vendor, who could be an amazing vendor and do a great job. It could be a terrible vendor and do a terrible job, burn your customer. You spent couple hundred bucks acquiring that customer, hoping for an LTV of 1,000. They're then burned by a third party who you earn $6 from, and the model just often doesn't work. But with travel, those two big issues, A, customer satisfaction, B, economics, are largely solved. So in 2010, 11, we started dipping our toe in the water in travel. In 2013, we launched Luxury Escapes as a separate brand, and it was very much a curated flash sales business. So we had 7 or 8 deals, which gradually increased to 30, 40, 50. So becoming a curated marketplace in a sense. And then really as COVID hit, we started transitioning to much more of a larger marketplace. So a directly connected marketplace and what we call bed bank. So through third parties. So I've sort of compressed our story into kind of 2 minutes there, but really been an evolution of journeys along the way with other businesses we're investing in as well, like Bookwell, that obviously is a full marketplace. So had quite a few different experiences along the journey.
Yeah, that's definitely quite the marketplace experience, and as you also mentioned, the kind of throughout the evolution of them, and some of the kind of the trends and whatnot. So kind of going back to the early days of starting Luxury Escapes, like what were the first kind of steps that you actually took to start it as a marketplace?
Well, interesting about Luxury Escapes is we had that background. So we had our local business that had hundreds of products on the site, and we learned a lot in those first couple of years. So you obviously learn how to treat customers, you learn how to work with vendors, you learn how to control refunds, all that kind of stuff you picked up. Certainly customer satisfaction, NPS is a big one, and how important it is to maintain that customer relationship, which is a little bit unusual because obviously most marketplaces are fairly hands-off as much as they can with customer. They kind of let it do its thing, whereas we've been far more hands-on. That's partly just the nature of travel. When you're buying a pair of scissors on eBay, the customer experience, you don't want it to be terrible. You want the product to come and be of a relatively good quality. But other than that, that's kind of what you care about. Whereas travel, there's much more touch points, much more risk, much more concern from the customer who wants to have a good experience. So you can have a Booking.com or Expedia style free marketplace, and they tend to give pretty ordinary customer service. So it's almost impossible to speak to somebody on the phone at the big online travel agents or OTAs, be it Booking, Expedia, Ctrip, and to Trip, and to extend Airbnb. Whereas we've always had much more of the high touch. So we've got a 24/7 call center. You can call us anytime, any day of the year at 3 a.m. and somebody will answer the phone, which is almost unheard of in any business. And it's certainly unheard of in a travel business. That just doesn't exist. So we've always had a much higher touch, understanding that it's a much higher LTV and a much higher CPA. So in that nature of a sort of that highly curated flash marketplace, we have one type of customer and one type of client, and then as we've transitioned to a fuller marketplace again, it differs again, and much more hands off and always on. But it's been an interesting journey as we sort of learned along the way, and learned from the early days just the importance of LTV and the importance of treating customers well.
Yeah, sounds like a true marketplace operator with that for sure. So there's quite a bit we're going to jump into. I thought it might be helpful though if you could maybe we could start if you can give us like a high level overview, and then also break down on I would say on Luxury Escapes as a marketplace and some of the unique aspects of it, just for some context.
Yeah, so we've got effectively two businesses now in a way. Both appear on the same site, so customers aren't always aware of the difference. But the original legacy business was what we call flash sales, and that involves a 2-week limited time offer with sort of 40 or 50 different hotels, and we have our own tours as well. And the nature of that is it's a 2-week short, sharp, tactical campaign at a significant discount, often 30 to 50% off what you'll find elsewhere, which is really unusual because travel's generally sold at massive marketplaces, call it the big OTAs or even the big sort of high street shops. Everybody has the same product at the same price. So if you imagine using TV as an example, so Netflix might have The Office, doesn't anymore, and Comcast may have it, and NBC may have it, and it's the same show across different platforms. That's how most of travel is. You can buy, I'm staying in Thailand now at the Pullman Cape Panwa, and you can buy the same product on Expedia, on Booking, on Ctrip, on Hotel Tonight, on all these, on your local travel agent, Liberty Travel or Flight Centre or wherever you are. The same product everywhere, so pretty much the same price, almost always, be it go direct or be it you go via a marketplace. It doesn't really change. Everything, and the difference is distribution. Versus what our flash sales business is a different product. It's like we've got The Crown or Tiger King. Nobody else has that. Only Netflix has it. Only Luxury Escapes has what we offer. So we'll offer a 25% off. Could be 10% off the price, as well as free breakfast, free dinner, free massages and transfers. Nobody else has that except for us. So it's a unique offering for a really short period of time. Intended is to drive a lot of volume, upwards of millions of dollars of volume to the hotel in need period. So it won't be in the super peak Christmas week. It'll be around that time, and they'll fill rooms that are otherwise empty. So we're competing against an empty room essentially. So the hotel, plus because we're selling not just the bed, we're selling meal, F&B and spa and transfer. These assets are much higher margins than the hotel, especially when they sit empty. So we allow a hotel owner to sweat their assets better. And we also sell basically on an early bird basis. So on average, 6 months in advance. So as a result of what we do, hotels actually make a lot more money while offering a much cheaper product, which is really unusual for travel, certainly at par. So our legacy business gives this great sort of impulse curation to customers and a great profitability to hotels. That's the business we had and still have, still the majority of our business, for about 10 years. So, and we've grown that. So it's grown from being 9 properties to 40 or 50. And so it's still curated, but we'll generally give region exclusivity, but try and have a cross blend of properties around the world. And we realized, and as good as a business that is, and it's great for cash flow, great for customers, great for hotels, problem with that business is lack of scalability. And as you know, marketplace is inherently scalable. And obviously there's a mini network effect, certainly a scale effect with marketplaces. And as you become dominant, you build up your supply and demand side and own it. With Flash, you have an inherent limitation, especially with region exclusivity, that I'm not going to run 50 Thailand properties on a Flash basis because it defeats the purpose of hotels giving us that, because you dilute their production. But our customers were telling us, so that gives 2 problems. One is you're inherently capped at kind of 1 to 2 billion TTV in the marketplace, which is a solid business, but it's not going to be $100 billion Amazon trillion-dollar Amazon business. You just can't get it. You're not going to be $100 billion Airbnb or Booking.com. You're capped at that kind of $2-3 billion mark, probably globally, maybe $4 billion. So that, and at the same time, our customers who on one hand gave us an NPS of 72, so love the product. 72's off the charts for travel. I imagine Booking's got an NPV of probably 10, Expedia similar, Airbnb might be slightly higher, it's probably 20, 30. So to have a 72 NPS is almost unheard of. The only NPS businesses 72 are generally the high-end tour businesses who control their end-to-end experience. So we've got this great customer love, but our customers will only give us 10% share of the wallet. So they'd say, we'd love you, but we're going to buy from Booking and Expedia and Airbnb because we want to go to Moscow or London or Dubai or Johannesburg or St. Petersburg or wherever, or LA, and we may or may not have that product. Chances are we don't have that product. We may have it 1 week a year or 2 weeks a year or 3 weeks a year, but you want to buy travel, you buy travel now. You don't have to wait for 6 months for us to have a Moscow special on or a Paris special on. So we have this really bizarre dichotomy where people love using the site, but we often use other sites. So the question is, how do you solve that without killing the golden goose? So we've always been a business about inspiration, curation, customer trust, customer love. If we just did a Booking.com and have every single property, 500,000 properties on earth, completely defeats the notion of the business, and you get lost in this paradox of choice. So, which obviously every marketplace has to deal with in their own way. But for us, it was more relevant. So what we came up with really through pre-COVID, as COVID happened. So as COVID happened, we had most big chunk of hotels around the world shutting, and our dev team with less to do. So we could have done what every travel business in the world did, which is furlough between 10 and 50%, or 10 and 80% of their staff, or we can do everything we can to keep our amazing team together and find something else to do. So we did the latter, and we had a good cash balance, so we weren't sort of at insolvency risk. So certainly we didn't think we were. And so what we did was we said, well, for half the team, keep doing the flash stuff, and half the team, we want you to start focusing on marketplace. And by marketplace, we meant effectively a curated marketplace in the sense of what Virtuoso is, which is a B2B2C marketplace in travel with tens of thousands of super luxury property, or 10,000 super luxury properties. So what our team started doing is started contacting properties. So instead of being a 2-week limited time flash deal, the conversation would change. It would be, we'll have you on through the year. So a genuine marketplace, you're always on the site. The only non-marketplace aspect was we were still going out to customers. It wasn't a self-serve marketplace insurance. It's not like eBay where you self-upload what you're selling, or even Amazon where you self-upload to an extent. It was we'd still go and negotiate and talk with our hotel partners, but instead of the conversation being 2-week special, it was, we want you to have a product that's on through the year, but it's still slightly different exclusive product to what you are on every other site. So we were dealing with the number 1 hotel in London, which is the Corinthia, or the number 2, which is the Red Carnation properties. And we'd say, we understand you can't give us the flash level of special because you're on all the year, and we don't want to hurt your other channels, but give us something different. So it could be free breakfast, which is $60 US a night, and a nightly cocktail. So it's slight benefit, or a free upgrade, or a free valet parking, or whatever it is. So a slight benefit, but still a relatively low cost benefit for the hotel, but of material value to the customer. It could be upwards of 20% value per discount per night. So we've done that. We've got hundreds and hundreds of properties live. We want to get to 5,000. So not in Booking.com Expedia style level of direct contracting, but enough to have sort of 5 to 10 properties in every destination. So no paradox of choice, but some choice. So if you go to Luxury Escapes in 3 months' time, or even now, if you go to Luxury Escapes, certainly in 3 months' time, you'll have 7 to 10 properties, or 7 to 10 direct contract properties in LA, in Boston, in New York, in Memphis, in London, in Moscow, in Prague, in Melbourne, Sydney, in all these places, as well as a long tail, which we'll get from what we call a bed bank, which could be Expedia partner solutions, could be hotel beds, could be web beds, which fills out a long tail to have sort of 20 options total per destination. So we'll never be a 5,000 option, like Dubai's got 1,000 hotels for 5-star. We're never going to show 1,000 Dubai 5-star hotels. We'll show 20 to 30. So you can come to Luxury Escapes and we've curated it for you, but there'll always be that great optionality. So that classic curated marketplace, they're going from the flash product to a hotel curated marketplace, and then building a bunch of marketplaces alongside that. So we'll go live with a flight OTA. So it's a bit like, well, Skyscanner is more meta search, but you'll be able to buy a flight on Luxury Escapes with cage pricing. So you can see the pricing for every day, which is very different to most players. And you can buy a flight through us alongside you can already attach now, but you have to do a standalone flight. if you're used to using Luxury Escapes, so you've got a credit, or you like us, or you want the great customer service. And we're also creating an experience marketplace, which is probably 2 or 3 months away, which is a bit like Vital, Get Your Guide, Fluke. So again, very much attaching to your trip, but also buying standalone. So you could be at the Napa Valley and wanting to buy a wine tour. You can buy it through Luxury Escapes. You can get hot air ballooning in Dubai. You can get a cooking class in Phuket. A lot of these are exclusive to us. Some of them aren't, but a lot are. We're also building a villas marketplace, so sort of a high-end Airbnb, using a lot of Airbnb suppliers. The Airbnb don't go direct for everything. Probably 20, 30, 50,000 of Airbnb's properties are through third parties. We'll connect to the same. So we'll have a good chunk of Airbnb's luxury supply we'll have, and cruises being another one. So we're creating a cruise marketplace for early next year. So again, cruising is very hard to buy online. It's mostly call up an operator, pretty backwards. You can buy, like Disney has some online functionality. You can buy some, but in most cases, they very much encourage call up. We'll have an online cruise marketplace, which always doesn't exist. It's very 1980s or 1990s, the cruise online. So then the final piece is tours. We'll have great online tours, which again is very offline. So I think most travel businesses specialize in one. So Booking specialize in hotels, Skyscanner flights, Airbnb villas, Get Your Guide experiences. We'll have everything at that 5-star level. So that really, we'll have great depth of marketplace across the 5 stars. So not great breadth compared to Booking. So Booking's got 500,000 hotels. We won't have 500,000. We'll have maybe 20,000 hotels total, 5,000 direct connect. We'll have villas, cruises, tours. So the whole gambit. So you'll be able to build your whole holiday. Only other place you can really do is an offline travel agent. And then you've got the face-to-face interaction, which is not always ideal for everyone. You're able to build this incredible holiday. And then we're starting other marketplaces within the marketplace. So we'll have our marketplace of supply at the 5-star level. And then we're creating a piece of software that allows you to build your trips. So you've got this massive supply now, this really great breadth of supply, and you'll be able to put it together using a trip planning piece of software. So build your flight, your transfer to the airport, your flight from the US to London, your hotel in London, your London tour, and you can go to Rome and buy your hotel and buy your cooking class, go to Tuscany, buy your amazing food experiences, go to do a cruise from Tuscany to Barcelona, go from Barcelona back to Dubai, do some stuff in Dubai, go back to New York and go back. And so buying your transfers all the way, buying experiences, maybe you want to stay in a villa when you're in Tuscany, not a hotel, buy that. So all that connected dynamically through a trip building piece of software. So you can do that yourself. And then we're building a marketplace for expert advice. So marketplace doesn't always have to be product. Marketplace can be advice as well. So we'll have experts curating amazing trips using our different supplier products. So we'll create a marketplace for expert advice. So if you think travel agents are amazing at giving advice, you can find that really smart travel agent. They spend 90% of their time building manual trips using these archaic pieces of software. We want to take that stuff away from the great expert. So you can be a great expert in Morocco or great expert in Russia. We want to just get your advice and get your knowledge and build this amazing trip that sits on the site that customers can just buy. So instead of having to find that great expert in Morocco that's buried somewhere in a suburb in Memphis, that Memphis travel agent who spent 30 years in Morocco can put their great trip online on Trip Planner using our breadth of supply, and you can buy it, you can change it, you can take that hotel out, replace it, but you don't know the best cooking class in America. You don't know the best tented 5-star experience. You don't know the best hotel in Rabat. There is somebody who does, or people who do. So we're going to try and create a marketplace for expert advice. So there could be 3 experts on Morocco, 3 experts on Russia, 3 experts on Tuscany. They create these itineraries. They get a tiny cut from us as well as tips from the users. And these travel agents or experts can make hundreds of thousands of dollars a year simply by creating this amazing experience and putting it up on our marketplace for advice. Obviously getting it rated. If your trips are bad, you get taken away. If trips are great, you get priority. So how to create a marketplace within a marketplace becomes the next challenge. So I think there's lots to do. Travel inherently, a bit like banks, hasn't really iterated its product, and is by product I mean online product, since 2002. So since Booking.com, Expedia started really creating OTAs. It's to extent Airbnb started down that road, but if you look at Brian's very slick winter product update, their best product was a Wi-Fi tester. This is not a particularly product-forward business at the moment. Airbnb is focused on their listing and getting their relationship right, but they're not focused on product. We're probably the most customer product-focused travel business now. So that's the journey from flash to marketplace to product getting that marketplace in the hands of people.
That's incredibly interesting. I mean, there's so much to jump into it that that you covered. I can only imagine some of the challenges though with the flash sales, and kind of moving from flash sales over to kind of the marketplace model, and then even as you mentioned, kind of go entering other categories. How are you thinking about kind of the sequencing into new categories? And is that going to be through the Luxury Escapes product experience, or is this going to be through new properties?
It's a really good question. All through Luxury Escapes, to answer your last one first. So we've got, and part of the reason, one of the reasons to switch to marketplace from flash only was we had all these customers coming to Luxury Escapes, so millions and millions of uniques every month, who just didn't have what they couldn't buy we couldn't sell them what they wanted to buy. So so we've got a marketplace that's doing we launched in January, haven't promoted it really online at all, or offline at all. Only people who happened to see our search bar and noticed that. We're sort of $130 million run rate TTV on that, with no marketing in 8 months, growing 20% month by month. So we think there's huge scale ability on that. So yeah, and part of that sort of secret sauce is we've got this business that has lots of traffic. So obviously that's the supply, the chicken egg issue with marketplace. One is you got to get a product, you've got supply and demand. We've got the demand because we've got the throughput. So that's sort of part of the thinking behind that. In terms of the work, it's been. Flash is hard from a perspective in that everything's a negotiation. Like to get these incredible deals, can be a 3-year negotiation between us and the hotel, us and the brand. So once you get it once, they love it and they do it repeatedly. It becomes like crack for the revenue team and the owner because they make so much money from this. But convincing an owner that's profitable is a big challenge. So Flash has its own set of challenges that we build an extranet for our hotel partners. So it's very hands-on work. Marketplace is much less hands-on, but much more tech-driven. So, I'm not sure how much you or your listeners or people on the call sort of know about the hotel marketplace product. But generally, for hotel marketplace is very different to product marketplace in that you need to get dynamic inventory and dynamic pricing because hotels are very dynamic. Pretty much all hotels are dynamic now. So back in 2003, Booking.com started with an extranet. You can get away with that. You can't get away with it now because hotels are revenue management has gotten really smart. And there's mathematicians who do this and super smart people. So they're trying to maximize yield every day. So that the pricing's changing. Not only every day, there's 40, 50, 60 rate plans. So, and those rates are changing every day. It's like airlines almost in a way. So it's super dynamic. Maybe not quite airline level, but we're getting there. So revenue managers are optimizing yield constantly for, are you staying 2 days? Are you arriving in 3 months and 6 months? Or what kind of room is it? So it's constantly changing rates. And there's constantly, and everybody's competing for that last room. So you need to be, if you want to be marketplace, you've got to be connected via a channel manager or a set of channel managers to the hotel. So there's really 4 kind of, there's a switch called DerbySoft, which allows you to connect to the brands. So your Marriott, your IHGs, your Hiltons, your Hyatts, your Accords. And then generally for the mid-sized brands, so the sort of high-end mid-sized brands, they tend to go through a channel manager called Nexus, which is owned by Sabre, which is a big US GDS, which is effectively talking a few sort of travel terms, but when you buy from an air product and you go to a travel agent, they use something called a GDS, or a global distribution system, which connects agents to airlines, and that's super dynamic. And there's a similar thing with hotels. So Sabre, the big airline, one of the big airline GDSs, has a product called Nexus. So that allows you to connect to brands like Kempinski and Shangri-La, and so the great mid-sized but super elite brands. So we're in the process of connecting to, and then SiteMinder, which is another big one for independents and travel fleets. So there's 4 main ones, and then there's another 200 localized ones. So Greece has one, and Singapore has one, Thailand has one. And so you get to the 4 big ones, and you sort of have 80% coverage, but you can't have a marketplace without a channel manager. And there's 2 issues there. Channel managers don't want to work with everyone because they make money as well. So if you're a tiny OTA, channel managers, they come back to us and you've got more customers, you use a bed bank in the process. And also hotels have to do work. So hotels won't connect with you until you've got volume. So you need to have volume. So that's actually quite there's only probably a couple of hundred OTAs globally, if that. So the bookings experience have a pretty big moat in that it's pretty hard to create a direct connected OTA these days. You need real scale. And otherwise you're going to go through what we call a bed bank, which is effectively a wholesaler, of which the big OTAs are one as well. So we've spent the last 18 months connecting to these channel managers, and we're pretty much almost done with the big 4. So we've got 3 connected. But then you've got to onboard the hotels. That's the whole process. You've got to work with the hotels and the brands to onboard. So it's a much, much, much bigger tech. We've got 30, 40 people working on this every day, getting hotels live. And that's why it's So I've got 500 properties live, not 5,000 already. We'll get to 5,000 in coming years when we start getting the brands on board. But it's been a much bigger tech lift, operational lift, rather than sales lift. So you get the sale isn't that hard. But it's not like Flash where it's a much bigger sales lift, much smaller tech lift. It's the reverse. But once you've got a product on, it stays on. And the really interesting dynamic we're seeing is some of our marketplace. So you think Flash is a really good deal, and we sell millions of dollars of product if it's a really good deal. But then we have a long tail of Flash. So we may have 60 Flash deals at one time. Top 10 will do significant revenue, $100,000 to $1 million a day, whereas kind of the next 40 might do 5, 10, 20,000. So it's a bit of a long tail. Some of our marketplace properties do more volume than our Flash, which is really interesting. So you've got this always on property that is always there, is doing more revenue and sales than a super hot deal, just because it's a more desirable location or it was on property, whatever the reason. So we see huge potential with marketplace. We think marketplace within 18, again, when I say marketplace, I mean our always on product. We think our always on product within 18 months is bigger than Flash. Flash always is a good part of our business and is a multi-billion-dollar business, we think. But we think marketplace can be a $10+ billion business in terms of TTV. What that translates into market cap, who knows? But we think that becomes a significant business just because it's always on. It's still the world's best product. You can still go to Luxury Escapes now and get a better product for London or New York or LA than on any other platform. So it's still the best product, but now there's choice as well.
Yeah, this is great. This is like a kind of crash course for us on hotel and travel markets. So you did kind of mention the team, I guess around 30 or so, and as far as kind of in markets and onboarding supply. So how many markets do you operate in, and then what is kind of like the playbook to to launch in new markets for you?
So the 30 is sort of the sub team that's working on marketplace content. We got 300 plus in the business, and then it varies in different roles. So we've historically been an Australian customer-centric business. So pre-COVID, 90% of our revenue came from Australia. So we had business in UK, US, Singapore, Hong Kong, New Zealand, India, in reverse order to start. And they're all about the same size, those businesses, kind of doing $5 or $6 million TTV a year. What we've seen through COVID is US has just exploded. With US travelers could go anywhere largely during COVID, whereas no one else in the world really could. So US business sort of 3x over COVID and it's sort of grown strongly. Sort of tapered off a little bit the last few months, still significantly up pre-COVID, but just that rampage and growth has slowed. UK has sort of gone back to record levels, beating pre-COVID. India's at record levels. New Zealand's slowed a bit because they're locking down, and Asia hasn't really opened up yet. But we certainly see, if you look at the size of those markets, whilst we've got much better penetration in Australia, Australia's about a sixth of the size of the US market, even though our population is a bit higher, we slightly higher spend per capita, and about sort of half of the UK and half of Germany. So if you look at our sort of market or TAM, Australia is probably 5 to 10% of global TAM for us, if not less. So we think we can get to sort of a couple of billion in TTV in Australia. Best case. Question is, can we multiply that penetration globally to get 20 billion TTV globally? Probably not, in fairness, but what can we get to from a global perspective? And then how do we focus on market by market, and how do we approach it? And we started mostly heavily lifting on digital. So it's mostly through sort of SEM, social, those channels. A little bit of influencer stuff, a little bit of partnerships, but we haven't really gone that hard other than sort of markets like India, where we're a bit more mature for us. But certainly UK, US, Germany are exciting new markets. I put India, New Zealand a little bit more mature, but still far. India's got huge growth potential, and it's sort of been a really nice straight line, really well run country for us. But we see great potential in the US. We think our product's fantastic for the US market, that especially as we get, and not so much Flash, but marketplace. So Flash, the problem with Flash is it's a business of scale. So because we've had this great Australian pool of customers, and we do what generally is flop and drop. So Flash is perfect for your Maldives, your Thailand, your Bali's, your Singapore's, your Vietnam's, within Australia. It's not so good for Australians going to New York, because Australians tend to travel to the US for 20 days, 7 destinations. We didn't have that in marketplace. For Flash, we had that at marketplace. So I think, and same with Europe. So we think marketplace is a much, much better product for the US and European markets, and for Australians going to those markets. So super excited about what marketplace can take the business to, going from a kind of sub-billion TTV, or call it hopefully billion TTV in the next year, to multiples of that as we were able to scale supply so significantly.
Yeah, definitely sounds like, yeah, just such a large market, and as far as the different opportunities for you. So you did kind of mention the team is over 300. So is that like around the, is that like more recently with kind of the the recent growth, or could you share a little bit more on like the team, and then even to like the org structure maybe?
Sure. So we had pre-COVID, we had 250, 240, and we actually grew, probably the only travel business. In fact, I'm pretty sure the only travel business that grew its team during COVID, whereas most even the great travel business, the Airbnbs, the bookings, cut their team over COVID, which is when we were different. So we're pretty proud of that. There probably is one or two, even Trip Actions and some of the great businesses cut. We did the opposite. We grew. A lot of our team are sort of phone-based, be it customer service, customer support, because we do have that heavy investment in that. So over 100 team members there. We'll probably get to it in the next year, get to probably 100 in product and development and design, which will be a pretty significant part of the team as we become more product focused in some development product focused. And then we've got probably a team of, what we call a commercial team. So people who are doing supply, so be it negotiating with hotels, account management, and negotiating with cruises, tours, and all those verticals experiences. That should probably grow to, that's probably 40 now, probably grows to 60, I guess. Again, that business hopefully doesn't scale in terms of size, it scales in terms of sales, because once you get one product, it goes global. And then we obviously got our support teams, finance, and obviously marketing and people and all those great teams. So it's sort of split. We generally split. We've got, like I said, a commercial team, which looks at, I think more broadly, you look at sort of supply, demand, and operate. There's three key sort of factors. So a commercial team largely looks at supply. Then we've got, and obviously tech oversees everything. And then we've got our effectively demand through our marketing channel, and then operations does sort of all that stuff that makes it happen. So broadly sort of thinking three ways and then subgroups within those groups.
Got it. Yeah, thanks for sharing with us on that. Yeah, so I'm really interested to know, since you're across, so many different categories and whatnot, such a large team, what is like the North Star metric that you're focused on, and, maybe some of those other kind of like KPIs as a marketplace?
We haven't historically focused on a North Star. It will evolve as the couple of things we look at, obviously, if you're looking at a really basic North Star, which we haven't made official, but sort of what I look at is particularly packages booked or rooms booked, which is a pretty common North Star for an Airbnb. I think Airbnb has rooms booked or nights booked, but that's a pretty common North Star for travel. But the other sort of factors you look at is obviously conversion rate is a big one, especially as we get more marketplace focused. AOV is a big one, obviously contradicts with conversion to some extent, but as we get more and more, I guess you call it, not so much vertical, as we get more horizontal, are we selling the transfer, the flight, the hotel, the experience, the other hotel, the other flight, rather than just the hotel, which is what we do now. So certainly AOV is a big one. Can we get AOV from 2,000 to 5,000 to more than that potentially? So that's a big one. So conversion AOV is a big one. But if you look at some North Star, it's rooms booked. But then how do we get conversion rate and AOV up significantly? And then how do we get customers booking more frequently? So we haven't talked about it. Personalization is a big theme. What we're working on, we're just bringing on a really good personalization team. We're expanding it, I should say. And how do we get customers buying more regularly? Our customers who do purchase buy 1.39 times per year, which is pretty good, but should be higher. So we've got a lot of rusted on luxury escape addicts, but we obviously haven't sold them what they want to, haven't been able to sell what they want. So can we get that 1.39 to 2 or 3? So can we get it? And our super rusted on customers might buy 20 times a year, but that's rare. How do we get the average customer up from 1.39 to 2 to 3? That's another big challenge for us. So repeat rates, AOV conversion, just three things we're really looking at.
And I'm actually kind of curious on that point. Since you are such a curated kind of marketplace, like what are some ways that you're thinking about doing that? Maybe with like the kind of repeat purchases.
Yeah, I think it's just making customers aware of the fact we've got what they want now. So customers are used to shopping for a certain thing from us. So if you want to get your Maldives holiday, 50% of Australians who go to the Maldives buy from luxury escapes. Even 30% of Americans who go, and we're pretty small in the US still. 30% of Americans who go to Maldives go to us. So we're very good at that stuff. And people in Australia know that if you want to go to Maldives, you probably should go from us because we're going to get an amazing selection and incredible offers. But if you want to go to London, you generally probably haven't historically bought through luxury escapes for 99% of people. We want people to be aware that you can actually buy your London hotel through us for less than travel agent, less than booking, less than Expedia, less than anything. So it's that awareness piece. the products we have is a really big one. And that's probably the key to getting our cadence of purchase up. So just making people aware. Once they're aware, we're confident they'll buy because our product's so good and so differentiated. But it's just letting people know that we're not just a luxury flash sales product from Maldives. We're actually, you can buy your Dubai, you can buy your Sydney, you can buy your Brisbane, you can buy your New York, you can buy your London, you can buy your LA, you can buy it all.
Got it. Yeah, that definitely makes sense. So I feel like you and I could go on for quite some time. So we're going to jump into questions here in a second. Before we do though, so you have some pretty incredible experience with marketplaces, and kind of through the evolution of them, I would say. So do you have any tips or that you like to share maybe with early stage marketplace founders?
It's a good one. Obviously, the chicken and the eggs, the key one. How do you solve that? I guess for LA, we started with the flash, so it's a bit different, but certainly being well capitalized is really the key. It's pretty hard to have a marketplace without a degree of capital going to, as opposed to other parts like flash you can. So it's different kind of barrier to entry, but having the right capital structure, having the ability to raise capital, it's pretty, unless you have some sort of silver bullet with SEO, and you're SEO gun, it's pretty hard to start a marketplace without some sort of cash backing to be able to build both sides of it. So having experience with Bookwell, which was a marketplace and a SaaS product at the same time, where ended up having a great result, and now teamed up with the Pressure guys who are world beating. It is hard. It's a real slog. Even if you're super talented, even if you're incredible with design, incredible with customer relationship, you've got to have the cash to back it up.
Yeah, that was actually a question someone asked earlier that they wanted me to ask, which is, about the fundraising journey. So, I believe you guys have raised over 90 million. Is that what?
Yes and no. We've been bootstrapped. As we sit here and now, we're still currently bootstrapped. We're pretty close to wrapping up a raise, fingers crossed. So we had never raised. And the beauty of the flash business is great negative working capital. So unlike other businesses, we get paid by customers first, and we often pay our hotels 6 months later. So we have this great flow. So it grows. So we've got this great cash profile, very different to marketplaces, as in very different to historical marketplaces. So we've been able to grow our business pretty well without raising. And then obviously COVID happened and it didn't help our balance sheet. So again, we got through, always had plenty of cash, but we had this growing gap, which we just weren't comfortable with. So we wanted to fill that gap. So when we finish the raise, we'll be as cashed up and as liquid as pretty much any travel business globally. And we just wanted to make sure that customers are confident in it anyway, but we have confidence that we can keep growing really quickly and keep investing ahead of the curve for growth. So most of the money we're raising is secondary. So some of our sort of long sufferings have done pretty well, but some of our long-term shareholders who had a great run, but haven't had liquidity for 9 or 10 years, have a chance to get some liquidity, which is great. And one of it's a public company who it's not core for them. So giving most of it secondary to shareholders, getting a little bit of liquidity, and there's a little bit of primary coming in. So it's our first raise, but the primary is more sort of expansion, balance sheet fix up to the COVID. But for COVID, we wouldn't have been raising. There's no chance we would have raised. But for COVID.
I guess we heard it here first then. So a little hint in the future. I think the question kind of came from the context of there's a lot of like earlier stage founders in Australia, and then of course we have like a pretty big mix of the like SF, LA, kind of New York City based marketplaces in the community, and they were just looking to learn more about like what it might be like raising in Australia versus some of the primary kind of tech hubs in the US. So
Australia has been this unbelievable business, unbelievable country for marketplaces. So if you look at the classic marketplaces, the late 90s, cars, jobs, real estate, the 3 best marketplaces in the world by valuation, by product, are in Australia. So realestate.com is by far the biggest real estate marketplaces, multiples of Zillow, many more, and even more after the iBuy fiasco. But even before that, it was, and the biggest shareholders in Zillow are Australians, Caledonia, who understood realestate.com for the early days. So, and Lachlan Murdoch from News Corp was a massive backer of realestate.com. And I think realestate.com's a $20-something billion marketplace now, if not more. By far the best marketplace for real estate globally, far better than the UK products, far better than Zillow. You've got the best car marketplace in the world's carsales.com.au. It owns marketplaces in South America and Asia now, and just dominates, and incredibly well run. And then you've got Seek, which is the best jobs marketplace, the most valuable jobs marketplace. So all 3 of those great marketplaces are Australian, which is bizarre. Obviously, product-wise, Amazon, eBay are next level, but certainly in terms of call it virtual marketplaces in a way, Australia by far leads. And we've got our own, obviously, you may have spoken to them, like with Kogan, Catch of the Day, and we've got our own marketplaces in terms of product, but it doesn't touch Amazon. But bizarre, but Australia's got this and then Envato, marketplace for web, biggest in the world. So, I guess we almost call Canberra in a way sort of a marketplace in some senses. So, and they're the best in the world. So we've had this incredible run of market, and I can't explain why, but just Australians dominating, obviously Mike works a bunch of them as well, but Australians dominating marketplaces, bizarrely.
Yeah, I've definitely kind of started to realize that there's the kind of pocket community of marketplaces there. So speaking of, we actually have Mike. Mike, did you want to jump on? He's in Australia himself, so I think
definitely Australians seem to have a different sort of appetite for marketplaces. I think simply because they've had to do it without the US sort of big brother watching them. You know, you're in Silicon Valley. There's people all around you that are starting marketplaces, SaaS businesses, tech startups. Whereas in Australia, historically, it's actually been pretty small. So they've had to figure it out the hard way, do the hard yards. And I think that's why we've, in Australia, got really tight community now of marketplace. Like there's you could throw a rock and hit someone that's got a marketplace or a startup these days. And I think that's just started because we had such a small community to start with.
I think, just thinking about it, I was just rereading, there's a book on this called Killing Fairfax, but I think one of the reasons was looking at jobs, cars, real estate. We had one really dominant classified, and Australia is a small market in the US. US is kind of 40 markets in one. Australia's really got Melbourne, Sydney. There's this called Fairfax, which is the main publisher, kind of the Wall Street Journal type equivalent, New York Times type equivalent. And Fairfax made most of its money through what's called Rivers of Gold, which was three classifieds. Made $700 million a year through these three classifieds. And then there was another major paper, like the Rupert Murdoch one, which was less focused on classifieds, tech classifieds as well. But a lot of so there's Fairfax are these three massive dominant classifieds, and they're really easy to disrupt because there was one company who had them, and that one company was backwards, and they had a terrible, one of the worst ever CEOs in Australian history, like Fred Hilmer, who was ex-McKinsey guy who known as being one of the biggest dud executives ever. They had a terrible board, and it was sort of fighting with the other legacy companies. They had all this cash, and they just had so many chances to beat these three up-and-coming marketplaces, and they just failed. Like investing in old-school newspapers and let these three super smart businesses just come and gazump them in all three, bizarrely, in all three fields. And they are these super smart people and these incredibly dumb people at Fairfax. And that Fairfax actually finally got and they're now part of a TV station. There's a guy called Greg Howard who fixed up Fairfax essentially, and built it and kind of got a lot back with the real estate one. But till he came back, they all just a disaster. And there's three businesses because it was so centralized. I think US was much more, real estate was much more spread. So Zillow came a bit later, and there's still the car, and there isn't a great car one, and Monster's just badly executed and was out executed by Seek. But we had this centralized one Fairfax classified, and people just attack it, and they did. And I think that's probably why and they're all out of Melbourne, not just Australia. All three came out of one city that has a population of Houston. So imagine that, the three dominant marketplaces out of Houston. It's really unusual globally.
Got it. That's really interesting. Hey, Mike, sorry, I didn't mean to put you on the spot. I was just calling on you since you're joining in from Australia also. I don't know if you had any questions or anything, or if you're all good. Cool. Let's see. I think Fakay had a question in here asking about marketing changes. So, recent kind of changes in, attribution and whatnot. How has that kind of affected your marketing spend, and, maybe even, kind of how you're, focusing and thinking on marketing right now with paid acquisition?
I'm assuming you mean the Apple changes.
Yeah.
The privacy changes. Yeah, it's definitely impacted. So Facebook was our number one channel slightly. We've got a pretty big, and our product lends itself really well to that Facebook style marketing. And our customer base age-wise is in the Facebook range. We've definitely seen Facebook, I wouldn't say drop much, but it's probably lost a little bit of ROAS, but only slightly. We tend to optimize for a pretty short payback period. So we're not we've been bootstrapped, so we're not a sort of venture-backed business aiming for a 5-year payback that, okay, you'll get there eventually and you'll make losses for 5 years. We've been profitable. We're paying dividends pre-COVID. So we've been bootstrapped, different mentality to many, I'm sure many people you speak to. So we've had a pretty short payback. As we see LTVs increase with marketplace, with broader products, we'll probably push out our paybacks. But certainly at the moment, we're keeping pretty tight. So I've seen Facebook, I wouldn't say drop, but it's been pretty steady. Whereas Google, as travel's come back in the last couple of months, Google's just gone nuts. So it's been, Google was struggling a bit. So Google SEM's come back a bit. Partly that's because of our brand strengthened as well. So a lot of that's sort of brand-based direct searching, less long tail, but we've also had a bit more of a focus on organic. So our certainly focus is how do we shift? And we've got a 2-stage process. So people sign up to Luxury Escapes, so become members, and then they purchase. So once somebody becomes a member, most of the sales come from directly owned channels. So we do a little bit of remarketing to our existing customers, but generally you acquire the customer, the member, and then they then become a lifetime customer. So most of our marketing sort of dedicates to that first step, and a little bit dedicated to the second step, but sort of 80% plus of our sales comes from owned or off-road channels, which is not that different to Airbnb. Airbnb talk about 90%, but I think that's 90% of customers, but a lot of those customers, I think if you look at Airbnb's, where they get the new customers, I think they'd be far more paid than 90%, than 10%. But obviously they don't disclose that, or I haven't seen them disclose that. But yeah, we haven't changed dramatically, I think, to answer your question, but we've always been a business that combines market. We've got a lot of, we have a TV show, we've had Australia's biggest TV show called Luxury Escapes, biggest travel TV show. So we produce our own TV show, gets us customers, gets us clients. So we always think about marketing a little bit differently. In a sense, a mini Red Bull. So Red Bull's the masters of sort of getting the content marketing piece, the creative. Right. How do we do a similar thing for travel? And we're definitely not anywhere near Red Bull levels of being a full production house, obviously. But how do you use great travel content? Because people aren't really doing travel content now because it hasn't become profitable, really. So hence why we were the number one rated TV show in Australia, because all the travel TV shows largely stopped, and the ones that didn't, sort of a rehash of reruns run at 5:30 on a Saturday. So we're prime time on a Saturday night, and it makes a difference. And we've got great fresh content that we pay for. We have great partners who help sponsor, and great hotels we work with, and it's great for customer love, customer trust. So we're always thinking, how do we think differently? How do we work with influencers? How do we work with brands? How do we partner with brands? How do we create great content? We've got a pretty big content team.
Right. Just to give you some context, I actually used to work at Airbnb on host acquisition. Yeah. So it was funny. It's funny that you mentioned Airbnb, and then I left about 2.5 years ago to start Hamster Garage, and we're an affiliate marketing agency basically. So that's what I used to. That's what I did at Airbnb. And so, and really our team grew from affiliate to partner marketing, and really an umbrella term for managing different channels, all performance oriented. And so now what we do, and we actually work with Canva also. It's a big Australian company. They're our biggest client now. So we manage affiliates, influencers, podcasts, third-party email, all these different channels. And that's something that I've been thinking a lot about is, like, obviously we're seeing this with our clients where, because of iOS 14 changes, it's like, okay, well, you guys might not be as affected. It seems like Google's having a bigger impact on you, but like the attribution is less clear. So like you have to invest and diversify your channel base. A lot of people are doing more SEO stuff, and they're just looking for new channels, right? And a lot of what we do actually is explore those channels. And but the thing is, exploring new channels requires a lot of bandwidth, and some of them may fail, some of them may work. Versus, last 10 years, everyone knows it's going to be Facebook and Google that you scale first, right? So I was kind of curious how that's changing. That's what I was asking about.
No, that's a really good question, and I think your business sounds like it's a fantastic business, and no doubt timed really well. It's absolutely. We have a fantastic new CMO who started really recently. One of the big briefs is how do we continue to build those channels? How do we build affiliates? How do we build influencers? Because we've got an incredible digital manager who's actually US based, funnily enough, who has lived in Australia, but he's from the US. And part of his role is affiliates, but he's probably more focused on general sort of search and social. So building up a separate affiliates channel for us is pretty significant, especially when when we've got it, we can send the influencer to Maldives. That's pretty good it's a pretty nice win-win. So rather than having to pay someone 30 grand up front potentially, I guess Airbnb would have been great exposure to that as well. But because we work with the best hotels on earth, it does give us good opportunity to effectively allow form that connection between the hotel and the influencer. We sit in the middle and do that. But we don't do it enough. Clearly, we need to find a way through a business like yours or in-house to systemize that process and really get scale.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. That makes sense. Yeah, I was just curious. It's definitely a thing. I think we're gonna see more of it. I don't think it's going away, and it's like I said, it's more bandwidth for less guaranteed results. So it's a big shift.
Well, I think the attribution is a real question. Obviously, the attribution question is a vexed one. And obviously, I don't trust any attribution, but it's why I trust the least. And I'm not sure. You have issues you have issues with influence, you have issues with Facebook, you have issues with everyone in terms of how accurate is the attribution. Everybody pumps up their attribution massively. How can you attribute last click, first click? Like, how do you attribute through the 15 different clicks in the middle? It's a challenge that we haven't resolved. We do our best. I think anybody who says they've solved it is probably lying. The question is, how close can we get?
Awesome.
Cool. Well, thank you for that.
Cool. I think we have time for one more question really quickly. Hey, Matt, did you want to jump on, or Matthew?
Sure. Thanks. Appreciate it. Thanks for your time. Really insightful information. I am the founder of Gear Focus. We're a marketplace for used camera gear and some new camera gear as well too. I went to school for photography. I saw the need for it. The need is there. The demand's there. People are tired of eBays and the big places to do that. It's going great. The trouble I'm having is development. I don't have a CTO. I'm in search for a CTO right now. We're not a tech company. We're a tech-enabled business. That is where I'm struggling right now. And I am telling you, crippling the opportunity. I should be at 10 million today for the year, but because of development and tech struggles, we're at like 1.5.
Still a pretty reasonable size.
Tiny. It really is. It's $1 billion. Like eBay does 250 million a year in used in the US only. Yeah.
I can see why, because there's obviously big discounts for secondhand. But I guess the question is, do you take a tech co-founder? That's probably and how much equity do you give up? Which is the big. I don't know if you've been to Prof G, because he was talking about that. Stock Gallo was talking about it on his pod last week. I'll do a similar pod. Obviously, co-founders are the best question, because you're giving up equity. It's a huge risk because you're bound for life. So often, if you can find that right person, if you can get the capital to pay a great sort of CTO or head of engineering, all the better. But if you can find that great, Airbnb is a classic example. With I've actually, Joe and Brian's founders, names escapes me as we talk, but they had obviously tech co-founder and 2 commercials. So having the tech co-founder can be pretty helpful, because it just saves that cash. You've got to find the right one, and find one you gel with, and one that's not going to rip you off and actually has the skills that you need. Obviously, it's getting easier now. There is much more off-the-shelf stuff. With e-com, there's obviously Shopify. There are absolutely marketplace products. Miracle's a pretty good product, albeit it's expensive. There are definitely products there that do it. But yeah, it's the co-founder. I think you're sort of asking an indirect way the co-founder question, because how do you fund? You've got to get one. The question is, how do you fund it? Do you fund it through equity, through co-founder, or do you fund it through raising? Like that's the question for you.
Yeah, so we're finishing our deck for our next round. We're determining whether that's going to be a smaller bridge, another seed basically, or if it's going to be a Series A at like 5 million. And so there's a lot of questions, and one of the partners is actually the founder of FaunaDB, which is a tech business, so he's a tech advisor for me. But I need that CTO. I need that guy that can just go into the code, right? Like that's my perfect CTO, is a guy that knows the industry, has done it before, and can go in and code all night for a week straight if he needs to get those quick wins. Because
we're not getting those wins. Yeah, it's probably not. Well, it's a CTO in a sense, but most CTOs don't want to be digging into code. They sort of want to be hiring people who are high into code.
But he has to have that ability to do that.
Yeah, you almost need that sort of engineer. You almost need a young engineer, like a good young engineer who can do that stuff, to be honest. And you probably get like, and you go offshore is the question. Like we historically always had, we had a team offshore originally, then probably 5-6 years ago, brought it all to Sydney. A bit like, not the valley, but pretty expensive. Sydney generally is very expensive. Again, probably not San Fran, but not far off it. So we've still got an amazing team in Sydney, but we just couldn't get and we're still growing in Sydney, but to grow as quickly as we wanted to grow, we just had to go offshore. So now we've got a team in India, a team in Sri Lanka, a team in Ukraine, which actually had for a long time, and a team in Brazil, which is going really well. So I forgot any other of my teams, but so now we've got sort of 3-4 overseas teams augmenting our teams in Sydney. So we'll generally sort of the product manager anyway, but we might have 1 or 2 devs, 1 or 2 senior devs in Sydney, and then 2 in Brazil. And the Brazilian guys are amazing, great talent, incredible ability. Not really the same skill as Sydney, but they're not super cheap because wages obviously are getting higher and higher, but less than you pay in that super tier 1 city, and still be employer of choice. So still give people to double what they're earning elsewhere, but less than what we're paying. And if you can get a good head of, I think almost your product is almost a more important role than I think if you can get a great product head, because you're probably doing that role now, if you find a great product head who can then work with, call it mid-level engineers, it's probably a better early stage structure than trying to find a CTO who probably doesn't want to get in the code that deeply.
Well, that's where I was kind of weighing out, right? Because it's like I can work, if I have a good developer, I can tell them exactly what we need, what needs to get done. It's that, and so I have been interviewing. I interviewed a company out of Poland, actually.
Poland's right.
Yeah, and so we've got some interviews this week. But I just, that's my biggest struggle right now, believe it or not.
One of the marketplaces so we sold our beauty marketplace, that Mike obviously knows really well, to the leading business in the UK called Fresher. These guys dominate globally, and they've got hundreds of developers in Poland. And an incredible dev, leading the world leading. So I think Eastern Europe's in mate. We got Ukraine, very similar, incredible. Most Silicon Valley was built on Russian expats, essentially. So it's incredible talent out of sort of there. Obviously Israel as well, but Israel, they tend to want to run the business themselves. So harder to get to the talent unless you sort of know the industry really well. So I work out in Eastern Europe and great. India's pretty good. Market's getting pretty hot there, which is a bit of a challenge. But obviously a lot of great talent. So I think, I actually think if you get a head of product, a really good, really smart product person who sort of sits, whether it's co-founder or just a senior person who then sits and can then work with an overseas, a dev shop based in Poland or Ukraine or wherever, or India, that's a pretty good model, not that expensive. Like it's not cheap, it's not that expensive. And it's probably
now when you say, can I ask you a quick question, Adam? When you say product, do you mean somebody that is actually product development, has 10 years of working with developers already, or somebody who understands what our specific product needs and works in as the liaison and the kind of the PO, right? Acting PO of that.
Well, the CPO has to be both. They have to understand your product really well, know what your customer wants, while at the same time talk the language and keep. How I think about it is our CPO, who actually is our CTO now, keeps the engineers honest to a degree. So that product managers need to have an understanding of commercial, of marketing, of engineering, especially not going coding, obviously, but they need to know this is going to take 3 months. Because I've got an okay gut feel after 12 years, and I sort of know if I get an estimate of 3 months, whether it should be 2 months or 6 months or 3 months, like somebody who can keep engineers honest, make sure they get a product right rather than having to rebuild it 6 times. That's that big cost if you build it wrong. So you can get that smart, almost, and we didn't have a product manager for 5 or 6 years in the business. And anything I regret is not having a really good product manager earlier. Less relevant now because there's much more off-the-shelf stuff. But I guess for us, we've had to custom build our whole platform because nobody does what we do.
That's where we are right now. That's where we are right now. We were with a platform called Xcart. In fact, I looked at a lot of different options that were out there with these pre-built, and none of them were going to give me what I needed long-term with my business model. So I knew that we were going to have to go into the custom, and that's when the rails kind of fell off. I went with a Vietnam development firm that just took the reins. They messed with Masio, and as I said, there's one thing you don't mess with is Masio, and they messed with Masio. So.
Yeah, we had a Vietnam development house initially, and they're probably not as good commercially. They're okay coders for sure. I'm generalizing the whole country, but you want to have a really strong product person working with Vietnam, I think. Yeah. And I've heard great success stories in Vietnam as well. So it's not as if it never works. You have the structure right. There's a lot of great Australian businesses who work in Vietnam a lot. Great low cost. Although going up, but great low cost, smart, hardworking people, but just probably aren't as it's a communist country, right? It came out of it's only sort of become commercial in the last 10 years. They probably don't have a deep commerciality that like even sort of the Indias, the Ukraines, the Brazils have a higher level of commerciality just because they're a bit more market based. Historical Poland certainly very commercial. I like having a local head of product working with an offshore team. I think now is a good one. Obviously, and we have a hybrid team, which I think is working really well.
Yeah. Hey, Matthew, we actually have a lot of head of product in the community. So we could probably help out there if, I know we can like post in there and try to get some feedback and input on, what to look for and whatnot. And then also quite a few offshore teams that have worked with some marketplaces. So should be able to help there. But it's a really good question. So
thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Really appreciate it.
Cool. Well, Adam, we're out of time here, but wow, this is a super interesting chat. So thanks again for taking the time to join us and share all of your awesome experience and insights with Luxury Escapes. Definitely a big fan of what you're building. So last but not least, time for a quick plug. Where can we keep up with you at?
Me personally, on Twitter at Lux_Schwab, and I sort of post. I got a podcast as well, like yourself, called From Zero, where I interview great Australian unicorn founders and their unicorn founders. So if anyone wants to have a listen.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll definitely include it in the details to this when we get the recording up. Also, too, I think you're the first founder where their marketplace has a TV show. So that's pretty cool.
Thanks.
Awesome. All right. Well, thanks again. And thanks everyone for joining the great questions.